Hello.
How are you?
Nice to put a face with a name. Hello. Hi, Sharon.
Very nice to see you.
And this is Josh, right? Oh, he's still getting on.
He's still
Everybody.
situated. Hi, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys doing?
Very good.
Good.
I've got to admit, before many more people get on, I had to clean my office up a little bit. What was behind me? It's like, oh, okay, get rid of all that stuff.
Yep, you got to be careful.
I know. Be careful, but you look like you're in your office, Sharon.
I am in my office today.
Okay. Josh, are you downtown?
No, ma'am. I'm in my home office today.
Good, good. That's where I am also. Well, that's where I always am.
I spend most of my Tuesdays and Thursdays downtown, but not today.
Hello, Heather. Nice to meet you.
Yes, nice to meet you. Very good to be here.
Heather is our what is your direction or identification for our group?
I will be staffing the committee meeting. So I am in the mayor's office and will be staffing your subcommittee. So I'll be taking notes and just assisting you however you ask.
So I'll call you and say, what did we say about this? And you'll say,
that's the goal. Yes.
good,
Hopefully
good.
I'll be able to let you know. Yeah.
Hello, Kevin.
Hi, Gail. How are you?
Hi, fine, thank you. Nice to meet you, Amy. And Mike Halligan. Is it Mike Halligan?
It is.
It is. Nice to meet you.
Very nice to see you as well. Thanks for inviting
Yes.
me. Appreciate it.
There you are, Quinn.
Hey, Gail, how's it going?
Good, good.
Good to see you.
Nice to see you. Oh, hi. Hi, you're getting rid of us, right? You're passing the buck. That's okay. That's okay. Now there's going to be a good addition with all the arts, arts and culture.
Yes.
Yes. So, and hello, I think I'm meeting Carrie Clark for the first time, who's connecting.
I'm here. I am.
Hello there.
Hello there.
Hello there. Did we get, did you get responses? Like how many people said yes, they would attend? Who would know that? Did an invitation go out?
When
When?
do you know that
Gail,
answer?
I think the email listserv that I sent you, basically the other groups, either people have emailed the chair to say they weren't going to attend, or they were going to attend, or they just attended without responding. So it's kind of been a mixed bag.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So sometimes, you can put it on a Google Calendar and then invite all the people and they can say yay, nay. Is anybody doing that or not?
Some are, some aren't. It's like Elodie said, just kind of a mixed bag on that front as well. But it looks like, actually, this is, Kevin, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is some of the best attendance we've had of any, right?
I agree, Quinn. This is great.
Yeah.
That's because we're nonprofits and we're arts people. We're used to showing up.
That's right.
Hi,
That's right.
Lisa.
Hi, Gail.
Hello. And Bill Garrett, right? Major.
How are you?
Yes, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. Actually, I was going to call you Heather, but I guess not.
Yeah, my wife wasn't able to jump in on this one, so.
That's fine. I'm glad to meet you. I'm not sure how many more we'll have. So let's go ahead. We've got 1 hour, right? Is that correct?
That is
Anybody? Oh,
correct.
hi.
That is correct. And we're going to lose a council member at 4 o'clock as well.
You are.
Okay. Hello, Mr. Peoples. Nice to meet you.
Hello, nice to meet you also. I think I saw you on the other day. I snuck in and watched a little bit. So.
And Lynn Wabish, hello. Can you put your unmute?
Me?
Yes, Lynn.
Oh.
Hello, how are you?
There you are. There you are.
How you doing, Gail?
So let's go ahead and start. Let's do some introductions. I guess I assume everybody always knows the other people, but that may not be true. And I know I don't know. So we're going to quickly do some introductions and get to the meat of it.
Gail, real quick before we do that,
yes.
there's one thing legally I have to say for the open meetings law. So just bear with me just for 1 second.
Okay.
Due to the COVID-19 pandemic, state of emergency, and Governor Bashir's executive orders regarding social distancing, this meeting is being held via teleconference pursuant to Senate Bill 150, as signed by the governor on March 30th, 2020, and Attorney General Opinion 20-05, and in accordance with KRS 61.826, because it is not feasible to offer a primary physical location for the meeting. So thank you for bearing with me. I appreciate it.
Good job. Do you have that memorized yet?
No, I think this is Kevin. This is our 6th one of these so far, but I'd imagine by about the 16th, I will.
Feel like I'm back on council.
So quickly, I'll just say that Mayor Gorton and I have been friends since our children were young. I came out of private business. Actually, literally, I worked underground for 20 years, came out and started working on senior programs and did a senior transportation program. Then a Friends of the Senior Center and an expo for senior services. So I don't have a social work background, so I may not know the lingo that some of you do, but I'll try to get up to speed quickly. And let's just go around and introduce each other. I've got a nice handy dandy list in alphabetical order. So let's go with Lynn Wabish first.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynn Washfish. I'm with the American Red Cross. I'm the executive director there. Sorry, my dogs will probably bark, so I'll put myself on mute after that. I've been with the Red Cross for about 9 years, and I'm happy to be part of the committee.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, how about Lisa Adkins, Bluegrass Community Foundation?
Yep, Lisa Adkins. I'm president and CEO of Bluegrass Community Foundation, and happy to join you all.
Thank you. Community at Sharon Price.
Hi there, I'm Sharon Price. I'm the executive director at Community Action Council, and I'm glad to be here with you guys so we can see what our next steps are going to be for opening back up.
Thank you. God's Pantry, Mike Halligan.
Mike Halligan, I'm the CEO for God's Pantry Food Bank. I've been in at the food bank for a little over 3.5 years, and originally born and raised in Muscatine County, Iowa. Came here through the Chicago area right at the end of 2016.
Welcome.
Thanks.
Okay. Amy Sweetall.
There, I'm Amy Sweetall. I am the interim CEO and president of LexArts. Just started February 2nd.
Oh my, welcome.
Thank you.
Yes.
Perfect timing.
Is Whitaker here with the lyric? Don't think so. Okay. And Major Bill Garrett representing Salvation Army.
How are you? Bill Garrett. Just moved here to Lexington back in July from New York, and we're responsible for Salvation Army's work in Lexington, up in Scott County, and down in Jessamine County.
We're glad you're here. We're glad you're here. Welcome. And I'm with the Senior Services Commission. Mr. Peoples, hello there.
Hello, everybody. PG Peoples. I'm president, CEO of the Urban League of Lexington. Looking forward to participating.
Thank you. Is Tim Johnson on yet?
Yes, Timothy Johnson, president, CEO of United Way to Bluegrass. This past Monday celebrated 8 months in this particular role here in the Commonwealth. and very happy to be here helping our nonprofits prepare for reopening.
Timothy, you're the only one that had the big sign. And I was, thank you, thank you, welcome. So we got some people who are new to Lexington. Urban County Council, Josh McKern.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody. Josh McKern, 2nd District Council member. Really excited to see these committees coming together and our economy soon to open back up.
Thank you. And did I miss anyone?
Gail, you missed me. I'm Harry Clark.
Yes, I did. Hello
That's
there.
perfectly all right. Yeah, I'm Harry Clark, and I'm kind of representing the arts because I bugged the mayor about being sure she represents the arts in this committee. And I taught at UK and the School of Music for something like 43 years, and have also been a member of the council and on quite a few boards and commissions. Looking forward to being on this committee.
Thank you. And he told me earlier this was his third Zoom of the day. I'm not quite sure, but thank you.
This is one of 3. Got one coming up at 4. So
okay, so we'll step it up. First thing I would like to say is I don't know if there's a subcommittee that is as varied as what we represent. I had a hard time getting my mind around this, but we have got 4 frontline people, direct service people, the Red Cross, Community Action, God's Pantry, and the Salvation Army. And there are more out there, but you all are here today, and I just have to say thank you. I don't know, here's a standing ovation for what you're doing. Thank you. It is quite a challenge. So then I broke it down. So I got you all in one group because you're a different kind, you have different needs, I think. Then we have, luckily, Bluegrass Community Foundation, United Way, and the Urban League. And to me, you all have your hands on all the different nonprofits and efforts going on in the community. You are the resource base. I think you're the hub who knows all the little nonprofits, who knows all the different arts efforts. I believe the hub, you're the hub that can help us put things together. And then we have 3 representing the arts and culture. And now we have our staff member who is also, your other title is what, Heather? With the city?
Director of Arts and Culture in the mayor's office.
Good. So we have good representation for the arts. So we've got everything from painting on a wall, a mural, to the Salvation Army and all the different things that go in there. So it's a challenge, I think, to see how we're going to address this. But I just wanted to say thank you. And we need to look at, the mayor has given us 3 questions to direct our conversation today. And that's why I broke the questions down into the categories. So for our frontline direct service people, maybe you all could go first and talk about these 3 questions. What are your plans? Well, the first one we have to revise because it's about reopening. That of course you've never closed and you've been busy the whole time. The revised is, are there other procedures and guidelines that would help you other than those already given? So that's something you can think about and make notes about and think about what else do you need from the community so you can remain open and you can remain safe. Then the second question is, what do businesses and organizations in your sector need to remain safe? It's kind of the same as the first one in this regard. And then what happens to you? What happens in your sector if there is a second wave? So does anyone want to go first and kind of chat? Thank you, Mr. Johnson, for sending me some reflections on this. I didn't get them compiled for everybody, but I will do this. I do say that the mayor has asked us to disregard to disregard childcare. We know this is important. The state's working on it. Everybody's thinking about it and working on it. But for our purposes, we're to pretend like we have childcare. And the other thing that I think maybe we should disregard, because the city is being able to get all of the PPE that we would in a dream world love to have. I don't know about you, but I'm cutting face masks out of old t-shirts. It works quite well, you know, and it's much more comfortable than some of those other things. So we can kind of put those issues a little bit to the side. So let's hear from some of our frontline people. Anybody can jump in. God's Pantry, Community Action, American Red Cross, or the Salvation Army. Anybody want to jump in first?
I'll jump in first if nobody else is dying to. So we are, I think right now, as far as we're concerned, we're just keeping an eye on the guidance from the governor's office, and then anything that the city sets up, because we've already had to because we've all been open. I'm going to guess everybody's in the same spot as far as frontline people, is we've already had to establish policies. So those are going to continue. And then, you know, we are looking at how we can start, you know, taking in regular donations, say clothing donations and things that we had stopped for a while. We've come up with procedures now to make that happen safely for everyone. And that's going to happen by the end of the month. But I think we've already kind of established our policies. And if this were to come back again, we would just have to go back into our current status, I guess. I don't know if there's a lot else to say on it.
Thank you. Are those written policies that you might be able to share? If they're not.
Yeah, I could send that out.
Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Here,
Anybody else?
I'll jump in and offer a couple of thoughts. So I'm going to do them in reverse order. What happens if there's a second wave? And for us, it's a little bit less about a second wave. It's a little bit more about what are the long-term implications of the economic downturn that we have seen as a result of layoffs, job terminations, working at home, and so on and so forth. If we compare this to the economic crisis of 2008, food insecurity went up about 30 to 35% across the United States in 2008. It took 10 years for food insecurity to drop down to the level that it was at prior to 2008, 10 years. So we don't think this is a sprint. We don't think this is a marathon. We think this is a triathlon. And we're in the first few hundred feet of the swim. We've still got the bike ride and we still got the marathon to go after the swim. So our vision is very much one of what is the long-term implication for folks not being able to put food on the table if the economic conditions do not reverse themselves quickly. So yeah, we're worried about another outbreak, but we're also worried about the long-term effects that we already know are here. There is data that would suggest that up to 50% of restaurants that have closed will not open again. That's a nationwide statistic that may or may not be true for Fayette County. So this, for us, it's very much a long haul. Because it's a long haul, when you think about those other two questions, what are the things that we do day in and day out to make sure that our employees are safe, are well motivated, knowing that it's not a sprint, it's not a marathon, it's a triathlon, so that 2 years from now, we're doing the same kind of work that we're doing right now. Because we actually believe that our response is going to be elevated for a very, very long time. So for us, it's very much about what's the long haul look like and how do we make sure that we can sustain activities to support the long haul. Hate to be so pessimistic, but based on previous situations in the hunger relief space. Those are experiences that we have that may tell us something about what the future looks like for our sector.
Thank you, Mike. It's better to be realistic. And it's much better to look at what we're actually facing. Thank you.
And so Gail, for Community Action Council, we're looking at it in, both of those guys expressed different elements of the way that we're looking at this. We probably have about 85% of our staff that are working from home right now. And when you talk about long-term, the longer this goes on, one of the things that we're finding is the better our staff are getting at working at home. Things are not taking as long. We're becoming more efficient. And so looking long-term, there's no way for us to go through this storm without thinking about the way that we're providing services in the future and doing that differently. And so it looks like for us that we're thinking that long-term, our services are not, everything won't be a walk-in face-to-face. We're getting better with electronics and technology and things like that. And so a lot of our staff will continue to be able to work at home. And that's one of the things that we're going to be pushing, not just now, because just because you can return and you're given the go-ahead to return doesn't mean that you have to. And so in those instances, when folks can perform their jobs remotely, we want to celebrate that and continue to do that. And then there are other positions and other services that we provide that you just have to be boots on the ground to do. And making sure that we have different elements in place, you know, to bring those people back in, even to our central office. We know right now with the way that our office is set up, we're not prepared to bring everybody back. But when we do, we'll do it in phases. But we've got some reorganization because we have people sitting in very close proximity to each other. And we want to make sure that our staff, you know, are as safe as they can be while they're working together. So we've got, you know, some different orders and plexiglass partitions, you know, on the back burners waiting to come in so that our staff will be able to come back, you know, when it's safe enough and our environment is set up for them to be able to do that.
Right.
So a hybrid of both.
Thank you, Sharon. Lynn?
Yeah, from the Red Cross standpoint, it's a couple of different things that we're considering. From a disaster standpoint, responding to a disaster is going to look completely different. We can't open your typical shelter. So we have looked locally here in Kentucky, we've looked at hotels to partner with in the event that they're here locally. Of course, we're heading into hurricane season, so that's going to look completely different on our end. Locally, though, we are also in flooding season, so that's another strategy that we're looking at and already putting things in place for those. The other part of the Red Cross is the wheels buses, so that looks completely different on our end also, and how we're getting all of our clients around. There's a lot of extra care that we're having to put into transporting them around, from getting them on the bus, off the bus, and then also the extra cleaning that our drivers are having to take while they're transporting. So that's pretty, you know, big right now for our drivers. As far as us going back to work, most everyone's still working from home except for some wheels staff, and then we have one admin in the office. And we will take our direction. We're still in what they call a code red, and we'll take our direction from national. It's not something local that we can make a decision on, but it is something national that they will make a decision on. I don't foresee, from what I'm hearing from our leadership calls, that we will go back until it could be middle of June. It might even be July right now. I don't know. So right now, that's the procedures that we're taking. As far as our health and safety side, we're still doing training in the offices. We're still doing blood, and we're taking all the temperature checks and all the regular protocol that everyone else is taking right now. So I think it's a long haul before we get back to where we would like to be.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, Lynn.
Gail, could I interrupt for just a minute? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Quinn, I am getting texts from my staff saying that Whit from the Lyric is unclear about how to jump in on this meeting. He's watching it on YouTube, but he is wondering about, could you resend Whit the invitation to the Zoom, please?
Yeah, Elodie, do you?
Oh, I'm sorry.
I actually don't have his email. Elodie, do you have it?
Yes, I will find that email and forward it to him right now.
Okay, perfect. Thank you all.
I'm sorry. Thank you.
Sorry, Heather said something. What were you saying, Heather?
I'm sorry, I have his email if you don't. Do you hear me?
That's fine. Do you want to just forward it to him? You have the Zoom invite that I forwarded to you, right?
Right. Yes.
Heather, I've already sent it to him.
Oh, all right. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Councilmember McKern.
So let's, I don't want to run out of time. I know we all have questions for these people on the front lines. It's astounding what you're doing. Thank you. But let's go on and think about the people in our hub, because between Bluegrass Community Foundation, United Way, and Urban League, I think you probably have a good grasp of some of the smaller nonprofits and smaller efforts going on in the community. Let's see what you might have to say. Ladies first, Lisa.
You know, for those that are set up like us, I mean, you know, we're working remotely and it's working incredibly well. And so it's, you know, operational remotely. I think what I hear, and a question that I have, Gail, from folks.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I actually don't have his email. Elodie, do you have it?
I just got on.
Yes, I will find that email and forward it to him right now.
Okay, thank you all.
I just figured out how, I just got on. If I'm
Sorry, Heather.
Welcome, Whit. Okay.
So Gail, I think the things that folks need guidance on, and I don't know if this will come from the state or if it'll come from the county health department, but you know, the number one, you know, like number one piece of guidance is that, you know, the number of cases should be in decline for 14 straight days. And all kinds of things are opening up and that is absolutely not the case. And so I think that's very confusing. So I think people are really unclear about, you know, for those who have administrative or professional staffs or work like us, you know, you could, you know, go back Monday. We're not, we're taking a really cautious approach, and we're not gonna be the guinea pigs is what we've decided, because it's working very well remotely. So, right, we're fully operational. So we're looking at early June, but I still think that is very confusing before you get to a lot of the details. Are we following this idea that there should be a 14-day decline, and who's going to sort of verify that on what basis? Because I think that is causing a lot of confusion.
Thank you. Good point. Good. What do you hear from the, like your people? Are you been in touch with many of these folks, the small nonprofits in the community?
You know, I mean, we're in regular contact with grantees, and you know, I think it just depends. I mean, some are absolute, you know, some are shuttered temporarily, and some are in full, you know, in full service mode. And so I don't know that's any different than the folks who've spoken before. Obviously, and you said we're not really going to talk about PPE, that the city is working on that on behalf of. Right. Yeah. So I think more than anything, it's about what is the date upon which people can truly safely return if they're, you know, as I think everyone, what we're hearing is everyone's concerned about the health and safety of their staff, you know, let alone those who they might interface in their offices. And again, I understand we're different because we're more in that professional services category than frontline serving and interacting.
Thank you, Lisa. Mr. Johnson, what do you see at the United Way?
So some of the things that we're hearing from our sort of nonprofit community revolves around obviously the lack of services and service levels that organizations are anticipating based on the recent proposed budget. So we know that's an ongoing sort of concern, but we know it's not a done deal because it's now in the hands of the council, but that's a concern. What's going to happen if for some reason there's no way to filling that gap, that void that's been left. You know, fundraising and revenue challenges overall. We know that this is a challenging time to raise dollars outside of dollars that may be directly earmarked towards rapid response around the coronavirus. Just general support is difficult to come by. We're experiencing that ourselves, but a lot of our smaller organizations who may not have the wherewithal or the savings to be able to withstand a prolonged period of time of decreasing revenues, there's some real concerns around what will happen there and how will we fill that gap. And with donors experiencing a little bit of fundraising fatigue, with so many people asking them right now. With organizations who some have shuttered their doors, some who are not operating at full capacity or doing their normal sort of work, there's a void left, and it's left for the other nonprofits in the organization, in the community, to help fill that gap, which again, there's more need, more demand, less resources. That's a challenge that we're hearing about. On the side of our students, education is one of United Way's hallmarks. We're hearing that with the NTI, non-traditional instruction, there's some concerns with the low and moderate income students, whether or not this reliance on technology to be able to continue their education, that's going to really exacerbate the education gap that we knew already existed before that. So how do we come together to be able to provide some support and help that from happening, providing internet, providing the Chromebooks or the technology to be able to help these students still keep up. Food is always a concern. So that's been an ongoing challenge with so many new people who are unemployed and have not previously accessed the social services network, now having to navigate this for the first time, on top of folks who we've already served, our typical types of participants that access these health and human services types of resources. And then lastly, concerns around mental health and the access to mental health resources. Again, with so fewer organizations being able to provide them, we know that being unemployed and other instances of isolation, increases instances of depression. And we know that that's going to exacerbate mental health crises, especially among those who are uninsured. So these are some of the few things that we're thinking about. And I know that I have all the right minds on this call who's going to help us all figure it out.
Thank you. Those are of concern to all of us. And Mr. Peoples, what do you see from the Urban League side? Oops, we can't hear you.
You're on mute, sir.
There you go.
Yeah. There you go.
Did that, is it fixed now? I'm good now? Okay, all right. Thanks somebody, whoever fixed it. Probably not much to add behind what Lisa and Timothy said. They gave a pretty comprehensive layout of it. I will say that the whole experience of working remotely has worked out pretty well for us. We're a smaller organization, so I guess that's one of the reasons it's probably worked out pretty well. In terms of client insecurities, our signature is housing. And, our concern going forward is what people are going to be able to afford, rents and utilities. That's very, very real. Thanks to the Bluegrass Community Foundation and United Way, we were given a grant to help some with that. And we're trying to hold back because we think some people who don't know yet that they're going to be affected will be in the next month or so. And so I think that number is going to grow. And I don't know how many resources are going to be out there to fill that gap, but that's going to be a real problem for those of us who do low housing for very low income people. And another thing that I know that we're concerned about as summer comes on is in the urban core, we're still concerned about some of the issues with crime. In the area of Chestnut Street where we try to provide affordable housing, sometimes it's very difficult to rent properties because of some of the issues with drugs and so forth. And they have a kind of a snowball effect on a lot of other things that affects our communities right now. I'm just hoping and thinking that this whole thing is gonna has brought all of us as providers closer together. And hopefully coming out of this, that closeness is going to put us in position to be more trusting and better collaborators.
Mhm. Thank you. Good point. Good point. Let's move on to the arts, and then we'll go back and talk about some questions. How about Mr. Clark? You want to start?
Yeah, I sure will. And I was thinking about the fact that for many of us in the arts, we think of the arts in two broad categories: performing arts and then the fine arts. Of course, performing arts we're easily detected, but I think we have to realize that in the performing arts, we're looking at an audience. We're looking at the facilities, both performance facilities and rehearsal facilities, and we're looking at performers, and then we're looking at staff. So it's fairly complicated. The good part is most of the arts are darkened during the summer, which is probably fortunate for us. And then in the fine arts, we're talking about a painting, a sculpture, a photography, design, and then literary arts. And obviously they have the same situation, and they're talking about the artists themselves. They're talking about their customers. They're talking about the galleries, and they're talking about, in some cases, their distributors. So all of that is impacted, and they are probably still thinking in terms of being active during this summer period. And so some of the facilities that we are talking about are the Lyric, of course, the Opera House, the Miller Downtown Arts Center, the Singletary Center, the Mitchell Fine Arts Center, and then private studios all over town for private instruction. And then we have Moon Dance, which would be a summer thing, but of course that's a city thing. And so they have pretty well canceled most of the performances, at least to this period. And Thursday Night Live, and then the Central Library Auditorium. So all those things are affected. So how we will react to putting these things back together, I think, is something we're going to have to ask each of those people. And I think with Amy and in LexArts, they have the most contacts. And so I'll just leave it to Amy to talk about how we can make those contacts.
I think you're queued up, Amy. Thank you.
Yes, I guess I am. Thank you, Mr. Clark. Yeah, really, I mean, all that I'm hearing in this discussion is rings true for LexArts and I think the arts community at large. Timothy hit on some very critical points, I think, for all of the arts community, which is just that our ability to raise funds right now, I won't say is hindered necessarily, but it just, we all have to work harder and harder to make sure that we are covering the basis for our needs. And so that, that is kind of our biggest stretch out there. And then as Mr. Clark mentioned, the arts community, by and large, really relies on in-person engagement. Our arts organizations right now, especially the bigger ones, are doing really phenomenal work, I think, right now in figuring out how to engage our community without being in person. And as you expressed, I mean, as we move through the summer and then, of course, back into the school year, how we're able to continue programming and engagement in the arts is going to be ever more complicated with the given situation. I do believe that the creative spirit is there. I think that we'll figure this out. And I think that why we're here talking today really kind of depends on us doing all of that in a very concerted effort. the original question about what do you need and how can you start your planning for reopening, in my opinion, really depends on a very deliberate and thought out and planned phased reentry. We have to know what the rules are. We have to know what the guidelines are to do those sorts of things. I think I wrote back to you initially that simply for public spaces, if the city could issue deliberate guidelines about how we do that and when, and then even give us public space notifications about, if you are entering this public space, here is what we require of you. If you're going to come look at art in this building, or come to this performance, or come to these lessons, or whatever those things are, this is what we require of you to be in a public space. And we can all certainly, Major Garrett sent us a great, start on sort of things that we can do internally. But I think if we can have some real guidelines that we are really sort of forced to follow, that would seem to me to be the safest approach back in. And the big answer is we are doing telework. We are continuing to work very hard through all of this, and we will continue to do that as we move along. We're just trying to be a good resource and option for all of our arts organizations.
Thank you, Amy. I've got to tell you, it is on our plate now to suggest those things and to request or suggest that the city initiate those things that you just identified. So the different items that would be helpful for you in public spaces, I'm sure would be good for other people. That's something that we can work on as a group. So thank you.
Thank you.
Now, what about movies?
Gail, can I jump in for 1 second?
Yes.
I'm just thinking, the Salvation Army, we're also a church, so I have a whole congregation we're working out how to make that all come back. But I know that there's a separate committee for religious. I don't know if maybe because it seems the state's thing right now is at the end of the month, they're going to start allowing groups of 10 to gather, but they're allowing churches and other religious groups in before that. I don't know if maybe it might be helpful for the arts team, especially for performing arts, to maybe even informally have a conversation with some of the religious committee, just because it's dealing with space and lots of people sitting and things like that. They might have some things that they're discussing that might help the performing arts crew really think about, what their proposals would look like based on a group that's actually going to be able to start doing it sooner. It might help them also find out what the challenges are, because, they'll almost have their working lab going with churches and other religious gatherings. Just throwing that out there.
Thank you. That makes a lot of sense. Whit probably has more to think about on that. Yeah.
Yeah. We, speaking about churches, we have one church that rents space with us every Sunday throughout the year, and another one, Park United, that uses the facility to do dinners to feed the homeless every Tuesday night. And one of the issues that was brought up in our executive committee meeting today was with that being churches and the amount of gathering, first of all, for me, how to parcel, the space for the use so that we are adhering to social distancing recommendations, but also the responsibilities of, all that entails when you have those large gatherings. Like my church personally is holding off because of the responsibilities of ensuring that the space is clean, monitoring responsible for cleaning. In our situation, it's going to be the renter. Are we going to be able to enforce, the amount of people that is allowed in the space? If they are taking on the expense and task of, doing cleaning, we still will have to have someone monitor that to make sure that it's done. So that's another issue that we face, because we do have churches and we will have gatherings. One of the things I'm doing right now is actually create.
I think Whit just froze on us. Can anybody hear Whit?
I think he froze.
Yeah. Whit, if you can hear us.
His internet connection probably dropped.
Yeah. Whit, if you can hear us, try and sign back in.
And write down those thoughts if you can hear us. There we go. Okay. Maybe we'll get him back and we can let him finish his thoughts when he jumps back in. Now, Mr. Councilman.
Yes, ma'am.
Mr. Kern, you are looking at this from a broader picture from the whole community. What are your impressions? Oh, here you go. Thank you, Mr. Go ahead, Whit. We can hear you now, I think.
Yeah,
Yes.
bad internet connection. So I think it's doing it again. So basically,
Did he freeze again?
am I okay? I've seen
In and out.
Yeah, and in and out. My apologies. But my concern was, you take on the task of and the responsibility of the deep cleaning and all that entails, going along with the governor's recommendations.
Thank you. Thank you. So you see it from different angles too, not just the public coming in, but the renting and supervising someone else's cleaning or taking responsibility for it. Thank you.
Are you requiring anybody specifically, like a cleaning business, to come in, or is it just whoever is renting it out at the time, they're the ones who could clean it?
I think my internet connection is bad, so forgive me. Right now, we are taking on the responsibility. We're closed right now. We're all working from home. We have a
Excuse me,
small staff.
sorry, if you open back up, excuse me.
Yeah, we're trying to figure that out now. Right now, we have a maintenance person on staff to be doing that, but that's only 20 hours a week. And so with the addition of the churches, because if we open up, like the churches are already going to be opening up before like the theaters and all that, but because this church rents our space, that's kind of create an issue with us. So we would take on the expense of the cleaning.
I think we've lost you again. We've got just 15 more minutes. So why don't we go to Councilperson
And pay rent,
McKern.
as well as rental event.
There you go. Okay. Okay.
Well, I think we lost you at that moment. I'll email you here if that's okay. Thank you, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, go ahead.
Okay, I'm sorry. What was the question?
You've heard all of this from all of the different sectors.
Yes.
From a governmental perspective, what do you want from us?
Well, the one thing that I would
Go ahead.
absolutely love to see is just the reassurance for people when they go back or when they come to use the service. That's the first and foremost what we're hearing from the public is their concern of, is this surface clean? Am I going to be standing too close or sitting too close to someone? How can I be reassured if I go into this spot that it was, as Mr. Whitaker was just saying about being deep cleaned. And it's just reassuring whoever is using that facility, especially in the arts, that it will be a larger gathering in some sense, similar to a church. If you come, you sit in a seat, how do you know that somebody that wasn't sitting in that seat 15 minutes ago or sitting next to it wasn't ill at the time too? And it's going to be a tough thing to demonstrate and to show people that it is. But if we have these guidelines in place that you're separate, you're away from each other, if people are wearing gloves or masks, there's plenty of hand sanitizer or Lysol wipes that are out there. It is extremely helpful in making people feel heard and comfortable in that environment.
And I think Councilmember McKern makes some great points there, particularly with some of the guidelines and benchmarks that we're looking for. And as far as this subcommittee is concerned, and the overall efforts of the economic response committee that the mayor has put together, I think what we need to do and what we need to focus on as we look to our next meeting is, I think everybody has kind of gone over their own what they're doing in their own organization. So I think what we need to do is if everybody could send Heather what their specific guidelines and benchmarks that they have been using or plan on using as they, I know a lot of us have been operating already, but as we start to reopen as part of phase one, if everybody could send Heather what those guidelines and benchmarks are that you're using, we can kind of put everything together in one composite document. And that'll allow us for this next meeting to put something together that the community can use as a guideline, as guidelines and benchmarks throughout the city.
Are you looking, thinking about the example you gave from Knoxville? Are you looking for something like that, the chart that they had with the categories and then the bullets?
Yes, I think that stylistically, the way they have theirs laid out was kind of what we have in mind in terms of just showing the city what the guidelines that we need to achieve in order for folks to reopen and continue operations. I think that's what we're looking for.
I did notice, and I looked through it pretty thoroughly, they did not address the frontline people who are already operating that are on this committee. So what do you want from them, for us in regards to them?
Right, and I think when you look at that Knoxville plan, the content itself is going to differ from what ours looks like, right? So I'm just looking for, and obviously, we put this nonprofit and arts and culture subcommittee as part of this economic response committee, the broader effort here. So I think in terms of what this subcommittee's job is, I think we want benchmarks and guidelines that will go along with those two particular sectors here in Lexington, that all these nonprofits and arts organizations can look to as a guideline in order to reopen. Kevin, is there anything I'm missing there?
No, I think that's a good summation. And Gail, I think this one may be because of the makeup of the committee. It may be we may have one set of those for the frontline folks that you've talked about, one set of kind of bullet points for the arts folks. So we address both like we should.
Yes, because I don't think you can meld them together. So for the frontline people, we could maybe have their procedures now, what they're currently doing, but also maybe address what they don't have that they need, Would that be appropriate, Kevin?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Okay, so if you have a little wish list, we may not publish it all, but we may, or what you're trying to do, or if there is a resurgence, then what you would need and what benchmarks would go in place. In
And
that
Gail, if I could add one more thing, I think, and this will go back to some of the things I really heard Timothy and PG say. Bob and I have been having this conversation. Some of this will need to go on past the time we submit a plan to the governor on how you reopen. Okay, how do we stay open successfully? And so there may well be a phase 2. So if there's things that folks think we need to address moving forward as well, we probably need to keep a good checklist of those so that we don't lose those in a transition of phases.
Right.
So if I could, let me offer a couple of thoughts.
Yes.
The first thought is I'm very much a visual learner. So if there's some illustrative models or some best practices, whether it be Knoxville or someplace else that you all could share with us, that helps me better understand what input you might be looking for. If that's something that's shareable, I think that would be helpful for me just to kind of provide good input.
That's a good point, Mike.
The second thing I would offer is each organization, there's a continuum of activity that all of us will go through. For those frontline organizations that have been doing this for 7 weeks, we're probably at a little bit different place than for an art center that's been down for 7 weeks. My suspicion is that that art center will be in the same place the food bank is in today at some point in time after they open. Because we've learned as we've gone along. We've learned what works for social distancing. We've learned what doesn't. We've learned what works for distribution. We've learned what doesn't. We've learned what works for masking. We've learned what doesn't. We're changing some things next Monday because of the requirement to now wear a mask versus for us, it was an option before. So I'm not so sure that we can't all think about this as that continuum of work. And I suspect some of the input that you will get from a frontline organization like ours or Community Action or Salvation Army or others is the same thing that you will think about a month from now that you're not thinking about today. And so I think if we put it in that continuum of modifying services, modifying approach, modifying activity, that will help us all kind of visualize at what point do we get from one stage to the next and how do we manage as we go through those stages.
Excellent point, Mike. Do the 4 of you have written anything you can share in writing would be helpful, and share them to Heather, and then we'll work on how we're going to compile this into, and maybe as, I guess, as Kevin said, or someone said, as phase 1, and then if we look down the road, how, not only how you're going to open, but how you're going to survive once you open, or if you can open, how can you survive after that?
Something else I'll share real quick as I look through the folks that are on this call. There are a number of partnerships that exist in some really cool ways. Half of the folks on this call we're interacting with today, the other half we aren't. So I think there's some common themes about ways we interact. So I'll just give a really simple example. I'm looking for digital thermometers. I reached out to Lynn this morning. Lynn, you got any leads on digital thermometers? Here's what we're getting ready to do next Monday. So I think not only can we use this group to help the city think about reopening plans, but I think we can use this group to help us accelerate all of our reopening plans, because we've all experienced different things in different ways and we all interact with one another. Sharon and I were just talking yesterday or the day before on the open distributions that we're doing in Cardinal Valley. Does that open distribution look differently next week because of the business needs that we know exist today versus the business needs that we know exist next week? Are there exterior or environmental impacts. So 3, financially. Stimulus checks hit 2 weeks ago. How did that change the landscape for the last 2? Unemployment is $600 a week. How does that change the landscape until July? And what was the third I was going to mention? Oh, SNAP benefits. SNAP benefits are maximized. So how does that change the landscape through the end of June when that policy ceases? That's going to impact people's ability to rent. If they've got more money to spend on food, or they're going to be able to then take cash that they have from other resources and spend that on rent. So there's a bunch of really interesting dynamics that each of us probably know individually, that if we put it all together, it's going to give a much better cross-segment perspective on the influences that those that we are serving have that are then affecting their ability to participate in service, whether it be social services or arts or anything else. Just a couple of thoughts.
Gail, can I jump in just real quick? Because I know Josh and I are both going the same place at 4 o'clock online anyway. Are we going to need to meet again? Because if we are, I'd like to kind of schedule while Josh is on the phone.
Yes.
On the Zoom.
Yes. Next on the agenda is, next step is, when should we meet again? If everybody can get their information to Heather in the next day or so, then Heather and I will try to homogenize it some way and get it in some reasonable form. I think we're due to have this complete by May 15th, right? A week from tomorrow. Is that right, Quinn?
Yes, that's correct.
By noon.
So,
By noon on the 15th, right?
when is available early next week for a meeting?
I'll throw this out there here real fast before I gotta go, guys. Mondays, I'm a little more tied down on Monday, but Tuesday I have a very open schedule throughout the day. I think that would allow us ample opportunity, if we need to come back one more time, that we could get in before the 15th, a third time if we absolutely need to.
And what is your availability, Quinn, on Tuesday?
Yeah, so I've got the sheet that we're keeping track of all these committee meetings. If you all if 3 o'clock is a good time for everybody, we could look at Tuesday at 3 o'clock. We don't have a council work session that day, so is 3 o'clock okay for everybody on Tuesday?
Anybody have a problem with that?
I can make it work. Move things around.
Works for me.
Okay.
And we'll try to get all of this information out to you before then so that you can digest it and put it in pockets. Thank you, Mike, for helping us think about now and later. And maybe some other subgroups can form out of this, because I know there's some other frontline people who are not represented here that might be beneficial for you all to meet with separately. And a good pattern for going forward. Anything that we need? Thank you, Josh. Thank you. Thank you. Anything else we need to say before we get, oops, that's it, I think. I think we're gone. I'll see you next Thursday at 3 o'clock, and I'll be sending you lots of information.
Thursday.
Thank you for
It's
your
Tuesday,
time.
right? Tuesday, Gail.
I'm sorry, Tuesday.
Thank you all so much. We really appreciate it.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you.